Hi, everybody. We are just letting a few more people in from the waiting room, and we're going to start in just a minute or two. But welcome to AAC Academy number 5. Well, I don't know. I think we've slowed down. Maybe we should just go ahead and start. Um, Hi, welcome everybody. I am Deborah Lesher from Columbia Regional Inclusive Services from our Orthopedic Impairment Program. And we're so happy to have you join us for our 5th session of the AAC Academy, which is Let's Connect. And this is Communication Partner Strategies for Building Communication and Connection. And it's part 2 because there's quite a few strategies that we can use as communication partners that really helps our AAC learners and users to grow with communication and language. So we did split it up. Honestly, some of these strategies you could have a whole day session on, but I'm glad we had 2 sessions to present these because there are quite a few. And I'm going to let some of my co-presenters and the people helping us introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Katie Tierney.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Tierney. I'm a speech and language pathologist at CRIS and an AAC specialist. And I will let Quinn introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Quinn Ellingson, speech and language pathologist on the autism team at Columbia Regional.
And Ruth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Ruth McKee. I am the assistive technology practitioner and low incidence disability specialist at CRIS, and today I'm just here to monitor the chat.
Thank you, Ruth. All right. So today we're going to just do a very brief recap of our part 1 of the communication partner strategies session. We're going to give you the second part, more communication partner strategies. We're going to talk about challenges with finding communication partners and also some strategies and guidelines from leaders in our AAC field. You can move forward, Katie. So just to review, we talked a little bit about some of the fundamental principles in AAC teaching and learning. And the first one we've talked about last time was that communication is multimodal. Everybody uses a variety of forms of communication, and one tool usually doesn't work for all. So we want kids to be as efficient and effective as they can be. So we don't demand that they use a system if they're communicating in a way that we understand. And then second, presuming potential or competence is something we really believe in. We want to have expectations for our students and presume that they have potential for learning always. We know that communication is messy and hard to learn, so we always want to make our communication activities motivating and meaningful. Very important to not have activities that they've done countless times, like spelling their name or identifying colors over and over again. We want something motivating, those things that they love, we want to bring into it if we can, because it's hard to communicate without speech, and we want to make sure we are offering something so great that kids are going to be willing to put in that extra effort. And that finally, communication has many functions. So we want kids to be able to request the things they want and need. We want them to be able to label, but we also want them to be able to direct other people. And we want them to be able to joke around with people and tease and comment on things, their feelings, do they like or not like it? So anyway, we want to keep in mind that there's many functions to communication, and that's what brings connections between our AAC users and people, and that's the most important thing. Okay, so last time we reviewed these communication partner strategies. We talked about structuring the environment to promote communication. We talked about providing opportunities for communication. We discussed how routines are so important in language development, and establishing routines can be a really great way to work on communication. And then we talked about the way we really teach AAC, which is through aided language stimulation, modeling, aided language input. It goes by many names. And we do have a recording on our website of our first session. So if you'd like to go back to that and look at it, please feel free to do that. Okay, so today we're going to finish up. We're going to talk about waiting for a response and using expectant pause. We're going to talk about how can we tempt some communication carefully without causing any frustration. This used to be called sabotage. We tend to use tempting carefully. Quinn, what was the other term we talked about that, do you remember?
Creating opportunities for communication.
I love that. Yeah. We're going to talk about assisting from least to most, so prompting strategies, and using questions wisely with our students. And then finally, responding to all attempts to communicate. All right, and we're going to let Katie talk a little bit about this idea of pausing and waiting and being expectant in a response.
Yes, I just love this picture. This little boy has such a good expectant pause face. I'm waiting for her to do something. So expectant pause is, I think, probably the most overlooked, and it is the easiest thing that we can do. So it's just, we're going to give them that processing time. And again, it's the easiest thing that we can do because we're just doing nothing. We're a lot of SLPs, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of SLPs and SLPAs, even paras, feel awkward and want to fill that silence. And so they think that they gave the prompt and the student didn't do anything yet, so they need to prompt again. But sometimes you just got to wait and you just have to count the seconds. I used to tap my leg. I would tap the number of seconds on my leg so that I wouldn't give another prompt too quickly. Ruth has a really good suggestion of using your tongue to count your teeth, because if your tongue is busy counting your teeth in your mouth, you can't talk. So it gives lots of processing time. And processing time, it's so powerful because it helps facilitate that interaction. It also helps you as a communication partner develop an awareness of that student's processing time. I mean, can be anywhere from just a couple of seconds to I've had students that needed 30 seconds or more of processing time just to understand and kind of process. It allows you to adjust your own communication pace. If you're like me, I'm a pretty fast talker, and building in those pauses allows me to kind of slow down a little bit with my own communication. And then for emerging communicators, it allows them to become familiar with their non-symbolic means of communication, and it allows us to see those things on them and see, okay, they're thinking, they're in the thinking process. Some students, it's clear as day that they're processing. You can just see it. You can see like the gears turning in their brain. So, it allows us to pick up on those things too, that expectant pause. And then wait time, it allows for our students to also formulate their responses. Some children need that extra time to not only process, but also to organize and get their body and their response ready to be able to respond or to be able to react. And we know that our students that have vision and motor challenges are going to need even more time. So our students with CVI, if they're presented something visually, are going to take longer time to process, especially if it's new information that they haven't seen or heard before. They might need that extra processing time. And waiting, it indicates that we're kind of expecting the child to respond, and it gives the child an opportunity to understand kind of the plan and prepare a response. So this is a really cute video.
Katie, I'm sorry, may I interrupt? I
Sure.
just want to say those previous slides are from the from Penn State, from Janice Light and several other people, and they have a lot of information about how to best present AAC to particularly emergent communicators. So that's where these come from. I just wanted to mention that.
Yes, and I
It's a
will
great
say,
site. I highly recommend it.
yeah, and there's a lot of video examples. They are older video examples, like you can tell that they were probably like from the 80s or 90s. But they are great examples of, especially, those really early emergent communicators. And what was that website again? It's Penn State.
It's Penn State. I can put it in the chat. How about that?
Okay, great. I will go on, and I'm gonna set up this cute little video clip. This is Deborah working with a student, and she does a really great job of, she prompts a couple of times and then just waits. And this is a kid that you can kind of tell the gears are going. He's thinking, and then it's like a light bulb goes off. All right, play it.
You want more? Oh, more, okay. Yellow or green? Yellow or burgundy? And you need to sit up. Sit up tall. Do we want more or finished? Burgundy or yellow? Okay, for now. Okay, so you look like all done on. Yes, all right, Ms. Rogan, or no? Are you all done with art? Do you want more or all done? So, are you all done with art? No, I see you. Are you all done with art? Or all done? Yes, which or no? Oh, sure, more backyard again.
So you saw lots of waiting that third time. So 2 times she kind of gave the prompt and kind of pointed to, do you want more or finished? And then that third time, I'm not going to give any prompts. I'm just going to wait. And he sat there waiting. What do I do? Oh yeah. Okay. I need to indicate that I want more. I just think it's a great example of that expectant pause.
You want more?
Okay. Turn it over to Quinn.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about creating opportunities for communication, formerly known as communication temptations / sabotage. We've kind of moved away from that phrasing just because it kind of gives people think it sounds a little mean. But what we're really doing is creating opportunities in a playful, fun way to get kids to communicate. So you can use playful strategies within an activity, within a routine, or by purposefully adapting or changing up your routine with the goal in mind of providing these opportunities for communication to occur. So if you're a speech and language pathologist, you know how to do these things and you're probably already doing them, but being really deliberate and planning ahead on how you can set up these fun and engaging activities can be really a great way to get kids to communicate. So for example, you can put items in jars so that they need help opening them. Simple, back and forth games like swinging or bouncing are great opportunities to set up those routines, use your expectant pause, and create those opportunities for communication. So if you stop bouncing or you stop swinging and you just wait, you're getting them to communicate that they want more. Because we're accepting all forms of communication, though, we're not gonna wait and give them what they want until they speak verbally or hit a button on their communication device. We're gonna accept any form of communication that they give us. So, a gesture, a vocalization, anything that indicates that they are wanting that activity to continue or that they need help opening something. Okay, next slide.
And Quinn, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So if they do have a different way of expressing that, is that a good time to model? Like, yes, you told me this, and you could also say it this way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, so we might accept their vocalization and then we can show them on their speech generating device where they might find that word. Yep, that's a great point, Deb. Using activities or routines that are really familiar to a child. Oh, I forgot to take the word sabotage out, but just know you're using that in a playful way. But if you have these familiar routines, then kids know if something is different or missing. And then the idea is to promote communication, not frustration. So if you know your student and you know that changing up their routine or not giving them the toy they want is going to be upsetting or stressful for them, then that's not a strategy that you want to use. That's not our goal. The idea is to make it fun and novel. I remember when I worked in a preschool classroom, we put all of the chairs upside down while the kids were out at recess, and they came in, and of course everybody's like, what is going on here? Why are the chairs upside down? And they thought it was so silly, and it really got everybody talking, and it's so simple, so goofy, but they loved it, and it got everyone wondering what was happening in that classroom. So we just did something very simple, but it promoted natural communication between the students, and then those that were using different forms of AAC had opportunities to use their AAC. Brad put in the comment, oh, yes, this is a good one. Playfully cheat during a game. That can create really silly opportunities to elicit authentic communication. Yeah, hey, it's not your turn. Yes, and so simple. Just when you're playing a game, you cheat, you leave out a important piece. You can, at snack time, you forget to give them their utensils. Very, very silly. So it doesn't have to be mean. These are just other ideas. The communication partner can give a closed milk carton just to elicit the open or help. You can, forget to give a student their cards when you're playing a game. You can, put their favorite toy out of reach, and then you create that opportunity for them to ask for help. Or, give a fork for a bowl of soup. So just fun opportunities to get kids talking. All right, back to Katie.
All right. And we want to talk about prompting, so that we're going to go over a couple of prompting hierarchies. And we believe that assisting from the least amount of help to the most amount of support is the best practice. And I know that there are some students that, might be the exception and need a little more prompting in the beginning. But we'll go over some examples. So, we want to use prompts carefully to support participation in the classroom. Again, we want to start with the least amount and kind of work our way up to increase assistance and support for the student if they're not responding. And we want to fade those prompts to natural cues. And I love this little comic. It says, when somebody gives you something, you wait for them to say, and what do you say? Then you say thank you. So we don't want to get them prompt dependent. We don't want to have kids be waiting for us to prompt them. So this is an example. I like this example of this prompting hierarchy. I believe it was created by Chris Bouguet. I'm not sure. But you'll see the very first thing, the very first level of support is just that expectant pause. So just providing wait time, nothing else. So that would be the least amount of support. And then increasing from there would be giving a direct or indirect nonverbal prompt, like a shrug or a hand motion, expectant look, like you're waiting for them to respond. And the next would be an indirect verbal prompt, saying something like, what's next? You tell me. Or requesting a response, again, saying, you tell me, your turn. A gestural cue, like tapping on their symbol or maybe pushing their device toward them to indicate that you're wanting a response. And then a partial verbal prompt would be using the student's device to start a response, like I like or I see, and then letting the student fill in the blank. And then a direct model would be the most amount of support, and you build a sentence for them, and then, that shows them how to do it. So you see in this prompting hierarchy, there's actually no hand over hand or hand under hand assistance. We are really getting away from that. And in some prompting hierarchies, I have another example. This prompting hierarchy does have some physical assistance because you may have a student that might need that level of support, but we really encourage not doing hand over hand, but instead hand under hand. So inviting the student, you can hop on, and guiding them toward the device, because that way then the student is in control at all times. And if they don't want to be touching another person, they have the option to say no thank you and not put their hand on you. So we really want to keep that bodily autonomy. And Ruth always reminds us too that when we grab a student's hand and we're moving their hand to make selections, there's no active learning going on for the student at the time. We're being their brain, and we're controlling their hand. So there's no actual brain engagement working there for the student. So it's really not beneficial to do that hand over hand. And the reason that we would use a prompting hierarchy is, like I said before, because we want to avoid our students becoming prompt dependent. I'm guessing if I asked you how many students that you've ever had grab your hand and use your hand to touch their device, it's probably all of you have experienced that at some point. And I think that that is largely related to that prompt dependency. They're used to having someone grab their hand and help them. So when you bring in a device or communication symbols or something, they're going to grab your hand and use your hand. So we do really want to avoid that.
I was just going to bring that up, Katie, with I've had a handful of autistic students, particularly over the last couple of years, that have grabbed my hand to use as a tool. And I've been able to help them get away from that by just pointing. They were very engaged with the device, so I was able to just point and tell them, you do it. I did have luck also with a child using a stylus instead of my hand. So those are just some ideas you can try.
Yes, if you have a student that is kind of stuck in that place where they want to grab your hand, I think a stylus would be a good next step to start kind of getting them away from that. And like I was mentioning before, if you are providing more assistance, like you're giving an indirect prompt where you're pointing to their device or something like that, remember that our goal is always to fade that as quickly as possible. So that video example with Deborah, she did those cues. She, kind of pointed she modeled the first time how to do it. And then the second time she pointed toward the device. And then the third time did nothing. So she did that expectant pause. I shouldn't say she did nothing. She did the expectant pause. So we are always wanting to be fading those prompts as quickly as possible so that we can avoid prompt dependency. All right. And Deborah, I think it's you.
Hey, Katie, before we move on, we have a question in the chat.
Okay.
Would you like me to read it to you, or would you like to read it out loud to everybody?
I can read it. Let me see here. Do you have any tips for coaching caregivers about, is it that one?
Yes.
Okay. Coaching the caregivers about the indirect verbal response and or requesting a response prompting levels. I find where I get stuck is having caregivers say, oh, tell me, show me, you need to show me. And it becomes a bit of a quiz for the child. Yes, that does happen. I would demonstrate that expectant pause and really talk about, just giving them time to answer. And maybe if they're over prompting, just, bring that to their attention. There's a really great video. Is it, what is it called, Deborah? Is it the Word Stealers?
Oh, language stealers, I think.
Language Stealers.
Yeah.
Essentially, when we overprompt, we are taking away the child or the AAC user's opportunity to communicate. We're stealing their turn, right? If we keep prompting, and we're over prompting, we're, finding the answers for them, we're taking away their turn and their chance to communicate. So that's been kind of helpful. I can try to find that video, the language dealers, and put a link in the chat, but that could also be helpful because I mean, everyone that does that is well-intentioned. They don't realize that they're over prompting. Even taking a quick 2-minute video recording to show, okay, not to put them down or anything, but just to bring their attention to it about how many times that they're prompting can be helpful. It's a fine line. You got to try not to be too critical because it does come from a good place. It's just we don't want to take away the child's opportunity to communicate. Parents do it a lot because they can anticipate their child's needs. They're really good at knowing what their kid wants, but they're not great about encouraging their child to speak for themselves and ask for those things. So, it's a little bit of a little fine line.
Yeah, and one of our favorite speech pathologists and people in the AAC world who are such great leaders is Carolyn Musselwhite. And one of her big things she always says is teaching, not testing. And before I go into that, I just want to say we can all absolve ourselves and parents and everybody who's new to this, because we've talked about how being a communication partner is hard, that sometimes we don't do things the right way, and that's okay, but know better, do better. So here we are to learn a little bit more about that. And that's a perfect segue into my use questions wisely portion, because that really is kind of often a form of testing. And, as a parent, I made a lot of mistakes too. We have all these expectations for our kids. We want our kids to show how great they are, and they are great, and they do have all these skills, and they don't always demonstrate them on demand in a dog and pony show like we want them to. So we just have to forgive ourselves for things we've done, but also move forward. So as far as questions go, even if they're not testing, we have to think how is this for our child or our student when we're asking them so many questions? It's somewhat exhausting, and sometimes, unfortunately, we might see students shut down if all we do is ask them questions and make them respond. So this is a nice little graphic about how a child might feel, when they get all these questions. I already answered this. I feel overwhelmed. This is too much pressure. This is too hard. Sometimes it's too easy, and I've done it 1,000 times. I'm over that question. You've asked me so many times. How many times do I have to prove it to you? Or I feel like I'm being asked to do tricks. So that's kind of a nice visual to think about that. And, to think about presenting gently to parents, paraeducators, answering a lot of questions is really difficult, and it limits our students' communication growth sometimes. I mean, it's great to have the communication connection, but there's some other ways we can do that. So particularly with answering yes, no questions, 20 questions is a fun game, but when you're somebody who that's all you get all the time, it gets pretty tiring and frustrating. And the problem with answering yes, no questions is you get a one response answer, yes or no. And we want kids to be able to let us know how they feel, obviously. But when we only answer yes, no questions, we limit their ability to develop their communication and what they want to say. So we want to keep in mind, we talked also about the functions of communication as far as our major concepts about communication. And answering yes, no is something you can do, but we also want our kids to be able to protest, to greet other people, to pretend, to ask information themselves, to begin a conversation, all these other functions of communication, to direct. I love directing. We want our kids to have that opportunity to direct other people if they haven't had that. So asking only yes, no questions really limits them to one response, and it doesn't expand their language at all because it's either yes or no. So the advice we give is, think about using questions wisely. It takes some creativity, but you don't want to ask a whole lot of questions. That's just hard for anybody. And you want to limit the number of yes, no questions and ask more open-ended questions. So instead of, did you go to the zoo this weekend? You might say, what did you do this weekend? We want to use open-ended statements like, tell me about your pet instead of, do you have a pet? We don't want to, and as a speech pathologist, I'm very guilty of this. We ask a question and then we think, oh, I could have reframed that better. And so we ask another one. And we don't want to overload kids with questions. So we want to ask a question one at a time. And then many of our kids need some processing time to take in what we're saying and to formulate an answer. So we want to be very aware of that and allow them time to answer. And then we might just spend a little time thinking about how to modify the question. So again, instead of, do you like pizza? Maybe, what's your favorite food? Or what are your favorite foods? Oh, so this is a nice example. And Katie, I think if you click the answers, yeah. So instead of, did you have a good day at school? Tell me about your day at school. Gives more opportunity for communication and a variety of language functions. Honestly, when I learned this, I thought it was so amazing, but it helped me so much with my own children. When they'd come home from school and I'd say, how was your day? They hated that. All these questions, they've been getting questions and having this at school all day. Just having something like, tell me about your day, or what was your favorite part of the day? Those kind of open-ended questions and statements might be more appealing to kids. So there's just some other examples. Did you have art today? Instead of yes, no, you could say, oh, I see you have a picture in your backpack, and give them an expectant pause. Maybe they'll tell you more about it. All right, thanks, Katie. You can move on. And again, we've been talking about this communication partner thing is kind of a dance, like a tango between the partner and the AAC user. So when we only ask yes, no questions, it really, again, as the research has shown, our AAC users are so often in that respondent role. They're not the person asking questions or getting more information or directing other people. They're responding. So yes, no questions puts them in that position more often. And then we need to be aware of the purposes of yes, no questions and their complexity. So sometimes we think yes, no answers are the easiest way to give kids a way to communicate, but we have to remember our language may be complex. What we're saying, they might not understand what the yes, no question really is or what the answer should be. So we want to think about, keep that part in mind. And again, what is the purpose? Do we want to know what they're doing in their free time? Then maybe we don't want to say, did you go to the movies this weekend? We want to say, what did you do this weekend? Or instead of, do you want milk? What would you like to drink? And then the dreaded testing question is Salem the capital of Oregon? We might talk about, tell me what you know about Oregon, or tell me what we've learned. Tell me what you've learned about Oregon this year, or some things you've learned about Oregon. So yes and no has many good purposes, and we have a lot of our AAC users who may be using partner-assisted scanning, where we want them to be able to say, that's the one I want, and no, I'm rejecting that. And I think that's a great use of yes and no. But as far as just asking them a lot of questions and expecting them to respond on their device to all yes, no questions can be pretty tedious for a lot of kids. Okay, and so finally, just when we're asking questions and we want to use our questions wisely, we want to confirm the messages. And that's kind of an important skill for our students with multiple challenges. We want to make sure that what we think they're saying is what they're saying. So we might want to be like, okay, I think you're telling me you like pizza because you looked at the pizza up on the board. But we want to make sure we confirm and let them know that what they communicated, we understood. It's important to work over a period of time on modeling and developing a reliable yes/no response. One of the first things we always look for in AAC is, how do you know when they want something or when they're saying yes to you? And whether it's a smile or a nod or an eye blink or a change of breathing or the way their body reacts, that is one of the most powerful tools we have in AAC, because we can know they're giving an assent, and we can work with that really well, especially with our more complex students. And then we always want to consider our students' level of fatigue. We don't have to confirm every message that they say, but we just want them to know that we're trying to be on board with, okay, I think you're saying this, is that right? Not every time, but just so they know we're not assuming all their intentions all the time.
I would just like to add, I get questions a lot about when kids have an AAC device. Can we put yes, no on the main page? Can we put yes, no on the main page? I hear it a lot. And really, we know we only have a limited number of cells and a small amount of real estate to work with. And we also know that devices sometimes break or they're not working or things like that. So it's really good if the child or individual has a gestural or some kind of physical yes, no response. Like Deborah was just saying, like look up or smile for yes, or look down and turn away for no. Whatever it is, it might not be a traditional nod or head shake. It might be something totally different, but it's really good if they can have that gestural yes, no, because they have it with them at all times and they don't have to wait for a device to get fixed in order to be able to communicate in some way. So I just wanted to add that on there.
And even if it's not, thank you, Katie. And even if it's not completely clear, even if a family member or a sibling or a peer says, I think they're saying yes, and you say, why do you think that? And they tell you what it is. That's a little place to work with. We can start attributing meaning to that and making them, consistently attributing meaning. So we're like, oh, you arched your back, or you put your hands up. I think you like that, or you're saying yes. It's a place for us to work on to start building that yes as a response or an assent. Okay, so here's just an example to confirm, I think I saw you looking at the Batman video. I think you're telling me that you want the Batman video. Is that right? And again, we wouldn't want to add that, is that right every time, but on occasion we can and look for that yes response. But that way we just let them know we're trying to pay attention, we're attributing meaning to what they're saying, and they are communicating with us and we're acknowledging that. Okay, so this is a handout from a really great resource I'd recommend people check out. She's called the AAC Coach, and she's on social media, Facebook, Instagram. She has a website, and you can sign up to get all her handouts. A lot of them are great for parents. So this is just her recommendations for, rather than using yes, no questions, here's some other things you can do. We can put this in the handout folder, but yeah, you might check her out because she has so many great resources for families. So again, offering choices or response options in the form of a list. Again, so you can do some of that partner-assisted scanning, giving failure-free opportunities, instead of, do you want to watch this on YouTube? You could say, what should we look up on YouTube? What should we write to mom? So anyway, this is a helpful little handout, and then we just have a little visual at the bottom of how you can go through partner-assisted scanning, giving them some choices instead of yes, no, instead of saying, do you want to play with the unicorn toy? We could say, we have a couple toys to play with. Do you want to play with the balloon toy? Give them some time to think about that. Would you like to play with the unicorn toy? Or would you like something different? And, we're looking for that yes response, or we're attributing meaning to what we think is the yes response. And even if they don't give one, we can say, okay, well, let me see. I think I'm going to make the first choice. Do I want to play with the balloon game? No. Do I want to play with the unicorn ball popper? Yeah, let's do that first. So it's always an opportunity to model.
Brad asked a clarifying question in the chat about the yes, no on a device. If I'm saying don't put yes, no on a device. And I wouldn't say don't put it on a device, but maybe don't put it on that main page, because, we regardless of if it's on the device or not, we want the individual to have a gestural way to communicate yes, no, because we know that technology is unreliable. But if it is on the device somewhere, it could be under, like, I know TD Snap has like quick chat, quick fires. It could be under that, something like that, but not on that main page. We try to keep that main page pretty filled with core vocabulary. Um, and then, like I said, we want them to have always have that on them, a way to communicate yes, no. Did that answer your question, Brad?
Sure did. Thanks.
And you can always have yes, no in other locations if it's a consistent thing, on a child's tray or on a, low-tech way somewhere that's accessible to them. The only caution about that is once you have yes, no up, people seem to revert to yes, no questions. So it's important to train around that too. And like, we don't want to just ask yes, no questions. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about partner-assisted scanning, and generally that's when a communication partner goes through a list of selections from a set instead of yes, no, instead of the 20 questions, do you want to go outside? Do you want to go on the swing? What's wrong? Are you hungry? We have some choices for them to go through, and then they can signal their choice with the way they communicate or whatever we're starting to attribute meaning to consistently with everybody. And partner assisted scanning can be presented in many ways. We can have visual symbols and point to them. We always want to allow that processing time for them to take it in and give a response. In fact, usually we want to say, here are your choices, and we go through the choices. So in this case, we'd say Starbucks. We could go to Starbucks. We could go to the donut shop. We could go to Jamba Juice. We could go have a snack at home, or we could do something different. So, all right, I'm going to let you choose now. Do you want to go to Starbucks? And then we'd wait for a response. And it might be, they might use a talking switch to say yes, or that's the one I want, or they might raise their eyebrows. It might be a lot of things. But we can present it visually like that and with the auditory as we're saying it. We can, if our student is hard of hearing or deaf, we could present it visually and give them the time. If they have visual impairment, we can use auditory scanning, and sometimes we just say the words, but we always have it mapped out. So we're consistent. We're saying the same thing every time. Kids learn the pattern and what's coming next. So, oh, and then we can also do it tactily. I almost forgot that. So they could be something the kid feels, that the student feels as they go along, so they know what their different choices are. It could be a combination of all those things, but partner-assisted scanning is a very powerful way for our emerging communicators, especially with the ones with more complex bodies, to start communicating. So we think it's a really important thing to talk about. And I see this picture on the bottom left. Once students are getting more familiar with partner-assisted scanning, it's a great way for some of our students to start accessing the alphabet who can't use a pencil or a keyboard, because we can give them choices of letters, start introducing literacy and phonemic awareness, all those things.
Deb, can I ask you a question about this?
Sure.
So for a child or a young person who's new to partner-assisted scanning, do you find that you have to essentially teach what this process is by maybe initially attributing meaning or prompting, so that you see the question I'm asking? For somebody they're new to this process of going through the options and making selections, do you find that you have to do some initial teaching or attributing of meaning to lock that concept down, or do you find that individuals pick up on it quite quickly, or does it just depend? Like, what's your sense of getting traction with partner-assisted scanning when it's new?
I'd say it does depend on the students. I mean, I've seen Ruth McKee just like start with a student and they are showing her what they want right away. And then some students, we really need to spend a little time to help them understand how it works. And again, I always say we should offer choices, but if we don't see a response, even to something different, and that's why we like something different, because sometimes kids don't respond because the choice they want is not there. But even if we don't see them respond, we may start modeling, our first choice. Oh, well, let me ask you again. We often give them another choice. And then we might model, you know what? I don't want to go to Starbucks. I want to go to donut shop. That's the one I want. So that modeling again is important in partner assisted scanning to show them how it works without them feeling, under pressure. But it's surprising how often you can kind of read a student if you're really looking and see that they're having a reaction to something, and then you attribute meaning to that. But yeah, it can take some teaching. It just depends on the child.
Thanks.
And you shouldn't give up if they don't make a choice. That's a good opportunity to model then. Okay, so partner assisted scanning is great for, as I mentioned, our students who have maybe some more severe motor challenges, more complex bodies, who might have limited functional vision, who we're hoping may use a high-tech scanning type system for communication or even for just accessing computers in the future, and individuals who might need partner assisted scanning to assist in learning their system. Sometimes learning this, just like waiting till the one you want to get to really helps you get ready for using higher technology with switches or whatever else you might use to access communication devices or a computer. Okay, so partner assisted scanning is again useful no-tech means to access language. What we really like about it is we are smart partners. Technology is not as smart as us, no matter what it thinks, even AI. So we really can read a child. We know if they've gone past the choice they really wanted, especially if they're using mechanical switches or other switches, we can really read that. We can say, oh, I think maybe you wanted the one before. Let's go through them again. We also know, oh, they need a little more processing time than the computer or the device might allow them. So we are smart partners. We're able to read more. We might even be like, oh, sometimes they smile when they mean yes, and sometimes they raise their eyebrows. So we know all these things. These smart partners really are very beneficial for kids to start understanding that other people are understanding them and to connect with us again. One thing we really like is that having two choices can be pretty frustrating to some people. Often those choices are not what you want. So to have something different or have a list of choices, if you went to a restaurant and they said you can have Thousand Island or Green Goddess, that's it. You might be a little frustrated. You might want something different, or you might want them to offer balsamic vinaigrette or something like that. Using partner assisted scanning gives us the opportunity to express a variety of functions of communication. So instead of just making a choice, which is great for making a choice, we can also use it to have children have that power of directing other people. So you might sing the song slowly, sing it fast, sing it in a funny voice. They have choices like that where they get to direct, or we might give them an opportunity to comment. I like it. I don't like it. It was okay. Or something different. So we could give them all these functions of communication versus just asking a single question or just giving them two choices. It can increase the active participation and interaction with all the communication partners because of all these reasons. We can do all these different varieties of functions. And then once people kind of learn the response, our peers can join in, other, siblings can learn how to do it as well. It can, again, like we talked about, set the foundation for switch scanning, which might give them more independence in the future with devices and computers. It can be less fatiguing than switch scanning because we have these smart partners helping out. And if the child skips over something, we might notice that where the computer won't. And then finally, it can be a very flexible method. So it's great for on-the-spot communication when, we're outside in the rain and we're, trying to figure out if they'd like a hat or something like that. And their communication device, we don't want to pull out because, it's raining. So it's a great, I think most of our students who are switch scanners should be familiar with partner assisted scanning and have a system to do that as well as a backup. Okay, so this is an example of using partner-assisted scanning. This is a student who we saw, Ruth and I saw, one of our we just love her, and she was so willing to help us out with trainings and things like that. And she was able to use switches to access a high-tech device, but sometimes she really did like to use more light tech and partner-assisted scanning with a partner, to get that connection, to have that back and forth, a little less strenuous than going through using her switches. So she is knowledgeable about those systems, but she's helping us out here to make a video to give an example of what partner assisted scanning, and this is auditory partner assisted scanning. So we're not showing her the visuals. She did have a visual impairment. So just a quick little example to show what that might look like. Oops, I can't hear it. Katie, darn.
I think you can't be muted. There you go.
Your partner assisted scanning form here. I'll go through them and then I'll go through them a second time and you can use your chimes to tell me which one you want. So I have a question, quick words, something's wrong, I want, I'll tell you what I think, let's chat, and people. So did you want to say, I have a question, quick words, something's wrong, I want, I'll tell you what I think, let's chat, let's chat. All right, here's what we have in that. Under let's chat. I'll read them first and then you can tell me with your chimes when we get to the one you want the second time. Hi, what have you been up to? How was your weekend? It's nice to meet you. What are you doing this weekend? What are you doing? What music are you listening to now? Good morning. Good night. Please. Thank you. No thanks. I want to add something. I want to use my accent device or something else. Okay, so use your chimes when we get to the one you want. Hi, what have you been up to? What have I been up to? I have been going to a lot of concerts, all kinds of different bands, sometimes with my daughter, who's 17, and sometimes with my friends. Is there something else you'd like to say? Yeah, okay. So this time I'll just go through our choices and you just use your chimes when I get to the topic you want. I have a question, quick words, something's wrong, I want, I'll tell you what I think, let's chat, awesome, okay. So did you want to say hi? What have you been up to? How was your weekend? It's nice to meet you. What are you doing this weekend? What are you doing? What music are you listening to now? Oh, what music am I listening to now? Let's see here. Well, I saw the Shins. I don't know if you know them. No? Who else? So you can see in this example, she is using these wind chimes to indicate that's the one I want. But also as a smart partner, I was keeping an eye on her face. You all couldn't see that, but sometimes I could see she was doing a big smile looking at me, and I knew that was also a yes. So again, just being a smart partner can make things go quickly. You can see we had a little connection going on there, which is lovely. So independence is great, but also the connection you get from partner assisted scanning and working with a smart partner can be really wonderful. So we've already talked about that a little bit, but I just did want to mention this last part about separating communication skills from access, because learning access for some of our students using switches or eye gaze is difficult, and learning communication and language skills is difficult. So we don't want to, not do one because the other one isn't developed yet. So partner assisted scanning, puts a little bit more of the work on us, And we can focus when we're working on language. That's, one way we can take a little of the stress of having this learn access and language at the same time off. We can focus and work on language at that time, and then work on access skills other times. So they all come together eventually.
One thing I wanted to add about that video too is that because she heard the choices the first time, then the second time you could see her body start to anticipate because she was listening and waiting for her choice, and her body was starting to move because she was anticipating it. It's great.
Absolutely. And yeah, that was just an example, because some of our students might need a lot of time. I should, for some of our students, I would go much slower. I would give them the choices much slower to begin with. And then when I was looking for them to have a response, I might go much slower. But then some of our students over time, they start to memorize these patterns and they become pretty quickly. So you could, we've seen people who go through the categories very quickly, do you have a question? And we're going boop, 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 and they say yes very quickly. So with practice, people get pretty quick at this.
And we use, often we'll use step-by-step communication devices, and we'll record on them. And you can record lots of different messages, but it's a really good idea to co-construct messages with the individual. And so let's say we're doing greetings. We could ask the AAC user, do you want to say hi? Do you want to say hey? Do you want to say what's up? Do you want to say how's your weekend, or something different? And then they choose the message, and then you record it for them. When Ruth and I see students together, she will often say, do you want to tell Katie to hurry up? Or do you want to tell her, hey, quit slacking? Something to tease me. And the students love it every time. So that's a great way to use partner assisted scanning as well, to co-construct those messages, because even though it's your voice recording it, it's authentically coming from that student, as they chose that message.
Really great point, Katie. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that video, Deb, with Perla. So great. Okay, I'm going to talk about responding to all communication attempts. And we've talked about this already a little bit, but you're going to take a multimodal approach. So any attempt at communication, no matter what mode they're using, we are going to put meaning to that. And you're going to follow the student's lead, and then watch for unconventional forms of communication, especially those that are at the earliest levels of emergent communication. Yesterday, Ruth and I had the pleasure of meeting the most wonderful young man, and his team reported that he did not have a really solid yes. And Ruth, of course, masterfully was starting some partner assisted scanning with him, and she just watched his face, and if he looked at the item she was presenting, then she would attribute meaning to that. I saw your eyes look at the yellow. I think that you want yellow. We're going to add that to this art project. And so she did a great job of looking at his unconventional forms and those early forms of communication and attributing meaning to those. And if the team keeps working with him on that, eventually that might become a very solid yes for him. He also did a lot of smiling, so we took that as a yes. So that was, of course, always super fun to go out with Ruth. I always learned something. And then just be consistent when you are attributing meaning, when you are confirming with your students. And then some examples from that last video with Deb is that we could tell that Deb was looking at Perla's face, and that she was not just listening to her chimes, but also paying attention to her body, to her vocalizations. Did she quietly make a sound at some point, Deb?
Yeah, I think she did. She did say yeah, and quite a few words. Yeah.
Yeah. So attributed meaning to all of those different facial expressions and modes that she was giving. So one tool that you can use on the next page, Katie, is the communication signal inventory. This was developed by Cynthia Kress, and it is in our resources folder if you want to use this. This is great for emergent communicators to kind of get the whole team on board. You can write down a description of the signal that they're using. Maybe it's arching their back. Maybe it is raising an eyebrow, and that description would go under the signal. And then you would attribute what you think that means, and then how the communication partner can respond when they are seeing that signal. And if you use this in communication with families, with caregivers, all the team members, then everybody's on the same page and they're very consistent when they are attributing meaning and responding to these communication attempts. On the next page is an example. So this child had a long blink, and that was their very clear yes. And then there's some examples of how you can respond. Okay, yes, it is. Good job. Thanks for being clear. And then when the team has access to this, they know exactly how to respond to that student in those moments when they're giving those signals. So again, that's available to you. Just another example of a personalized gesture dictionary. John knocks on the table. This means he wants food. How do you respond? Do you attribute meaning? Oh, you want food. You're telling me you're hungry. And then the gestures can be made less idiosyncratic when partners use it also. So just giving the team and everyone involved with the child ideas of how they can respond. I also use this same idea for the Gestalt language processors that I work with, where you can put in the Gestalt they're using, what we think it means, and then how communication partners can respond. So this whole kind of dictionary idea is useful with a lot of different students. Okay. And then these are things that we, as if you're an SLP, that you already do with your students, but these are just ways to give really natural feedback to the kids that we're working with. So re-auditorizing, this is really just repeating back the phrases, letters, or words that they are using. Katie, remind me of this person's name. I didn't have it. Oh, I do have it in my notes. It's Gail Porter. Thank you. Dr. Gail Porter, verbally referencing, it's really just narrating, giving information about what you're observing. You know, oh, I see that you are smiling. So I think you are saying that you really like this. State the meaning that you've assigned to the movement or behavior or the signal that you're seeing. Do some recapping, repeat all of the words that were said so far. And then reword. This is, again, just kind of restating with a full and correct grammar. They said on their device, want go, and you are modeling back, you want to go. Those are just some examples. And then we want to respectfully confirm. Deb has already talked about this a little bit, but respectfully confirm what the student is communicating to us. So yeah, example, oh, you want the bubbles, is that right? And again, you don't have to say, is that right, after everything, but just confirming that you're reading them correctly. And then make sure you're allowing adequate time for the AAC user to agree or to disagree. If we move on completely, we might miss the signals that they're giving us. Respond respectfully, as there might be a misinterpretation. And we really want to avoid saying things like, I don't understand what you're saying. What are you trying to tell me? But instead try saying things like, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding, and kind of put the onus on yourself. Can you please tell me again? This is what I heard. Did I say that right? So just being very respectful. Acknowledge emotions. I can see from your face that you are not happy. I think you don't want to play with bubbles. And then provide really descriptive feedback. Megan, you're looking at the clock. I think that you were telling me that you are all done. And then just acknowledge and proceed with communicating together. I really love these suggestions. And, oh, where's my cute picture? It's not there. Oh, there it is. I'm not sure if this fits great in this spot, but when I was going through these slides about responding to all communication, it made me think of how often I get questions from teachers and other staff about autistic AAC users that maybe appear to be stimming with their device, and they're just really not sure how to respond when a child is, pushing the 9 button over and over and over again, and it's going on for several minutes. And this is linked below. Here is a really nice article from Practical AAC about if students are stimming or are they learning. And so just a couple points I wanted to make as that if your AAC user is new, that they do need time to babble and explore using a new device. We kind of equate it to a child babbling who is just learning language for the first time. So they do need opportunities to just explore. And taking away the AAC device or turning down the volume is really not an option. One thing that we often suggest is changing the dwell time in the settings, which means they have to press the button longer in order to get it to activate. And that way you're not having those long, 5-minute strings of text that keep talking over and over and over again, and that they have to be a little bit more deliberate about touching the button that they want.
And Quinn, sometimes there's a delay function too that kind of does the same thing. They touch it and then it won't activate again for a little bit, so they can't have that over and over and over and over again.
Right.
Different devices and different AAC apps call it different things. Like sometimes it's called like activate on release. So you can, tell it instead of just when they touch it lightly, you can tell it how many like milliseconds or seconds that you want that delay to be. Sometimes it's called debounce. There's lots of different ways that you can add just a little bit of a delay so that it's not 700, 99999.
And Christy mentioned ignore repeat too. You might
Ignore
see
repeat,
some
yep.
subsystems.
Or interrupt. There's an interrupt button too.
Yeah. So that's a nice strategy if you have that kiddo that loves to hit all those buttons. And then it may be considered annoying or distracting, but you want to talk to your student like you would a speaking child. If a speaking child is saying something that's annoying or distracting, then you would redirect them verbally, and you would do the same thing with your AAC user. And then it's important to remember that they may not just be stimming. They might be learning by like tuning into the intonation of synthesized speech. That synthesized speech might be new to them. They might find it fascinating. They might be learning what it sounds like. And then if you really do think they're stimming, it can be helpful to find out why they might be dysregulated or why they find that stimming really regulating, and see how you can help them become regulated so they're not needing that input. And then you might also consider building talk time into their daily schedule where they can just explore that device as much as they want to, and it's not going to bother others. Okay. This is back to you, Katie.
Back to me. So we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies and guidelines from other kind of AAC professionals in the field. So this is Lauren Enders, and she has a Pinterest. She does lots of Pinterest pinning, but she often posts things about that are helpful for AAC users and communication partners. Then this is from Assistive Wear, How to Be a Respectful Communication Partner. And then this one is Partner Strategies booklet. I actually wanted to click on it. Okay, are you all able to see it? Thumbs up. Okay, so it has this nice page at the beginning that it's also in your Google handouts. But these are some functions of communication, and I think it's great to just remember that there are other functions of communications besides requesting. So protesting, commenting. We've talked a lot about these over the last 2 sessions, but answering and asking questions, directing others' actions. And then after these great little graphics, and I love the symbols too. They're the nicer Boardmaker PCS symbols. I just think they're well done. But then after that is this booklet for communication partner strategies. And it has some really helpful tips. So if you have, paraeducators that don't have a lot of information in this field and they're the ones that are going to be working with the student, this has some great suggestions for how they can, just make it easier to communicate with an AAC user. So like having the device always available, who's going to carry the device, how are they going to get it from place to place, is there a backup device that we're going to use at recess when it's raining, how to read and respond, those nonverbal communication skills that we've been talking about, some other basics about modeling and aided language input, which we talked about last time. So it's kind of a nice, and it's not an overwhelming packet. It looks like it's 15 pages long. But another thing that I really like about it is at the end here, it gives an example of the activities during the day and some communication opportunities, and then what the communication function is that's being modeled during that time. And then at the very last, I'm going to skip ahead to the very, very last one. There is a place for you to make a plan for modeling for your students. So how we're going to model, what the opportunity or messages we're going to model, and the function of communication that we're addressing or modeling or teaching. So I think that's a really useful plan for our AAC users and for our communication partners to have some strategies. So I just wanted to share that. Let's see if I can get back to my presentation now. Okay. So Lauren Enders, if you haven't heard about her, check her out. She's amazing. We'll share more of her implementation ideas in our next session, which I think is AAC and the IEP and implementation ideas. She also created this poster. She has a newer one, but we kind of like the look of this older one, but it's AAC Boot Camp, and they're just some basic do's and don'ts. And it's great to print as a poster and hang up in the classroom. So just some reminders, like our communication partners don't do all the talking. Instead, we're going to presume potential, presume competence, and we're going to let our AAC users do some of the talking. Don't over prompt. We're going to instead follow our prompting hierarchy. So you can just see some different examples. Don't stop all the babbling on the device. Allow the user time to explore and learn their system. So all these things are things that we've been talking about, but it's just nice to have a reminder that's all kind of one page, especially great for, paras or people that might not be able to attend trainings like this. It's pretty simple instructions for, okay, don't do this, but do this instead. And this is another one. This one came from Assistive Wear, similar thing. We are going to use the AAC system to talk for yourself. Don't expect the AAC user to communicate without you modeling how. So again, just these reminders that I think people sometimes forget because we all get busy, and so it's nice to have it in one form. And this one is actually, it's a person-centered communication partner checklist, and it's survey based, and you would sit down with the AAC user and fill it out with them. So it asks things like, are you distracted by things in the background? Should I take those things away? And then they can say yes, no, or just ask me, something like that. So this is to see what things that we can change to help make the AAC users experience easier. It is, I think, 2 to 3 pages. It's also in the handouts. We put it in there today. And it also asks things like, if the communication partner, if I don't understand something you're telling me, which of these things are helpful? Do you want me to say, I don't understand, please repeat? Do you want me to, ask again? And so then the AAC user gets to say, please, if you don't understand, stop me and ask again. Yes, that's helpful. So it's kind of nice to hear from the AAC user what they think is helpful. Did you have anything to add on this, Deb?
I think not really, but I think a lot of tools like this are really helpful because we can share it with teams when our students transition, and then they're like, oh, this is what this student or the family thinks is important, or peers. It just helps smooth the path, as Carolyn Musselwhite would say.
Yeah. And it says things like, for physical space, sit at the same level as me. So some AAC users, that might be really important that their communication partner is sitting at the same level, and others may not really care. So this is really helpful for, our AAC users that are able to let us know which things they prefer. I think this is a really handy checklist. Okay, back to you, Deborah.
Uh-oh, you're muted, Deb.
Thank you, Quinn. In some of our other sessions, we've had people say, can you all just touch on some of these challenges we have with having available communication partners? We all know staffing is not what we all wish it would be in every school, and not everybody's interested in working on AAC. So there are some barriers and challenges. And this is just a list from me looking through the internet, some of the things. A lack of familiarity might make some people not willing to really want to be an active communication partner. It is challenging. And again, let's give forgiveness to all of us to learn a new system of communication. It's almost like a second language. So people do need access to the training and to gain some comfort level to be good communication partners. We have time constraints. There's so many things we have to do with our kids every day. So some people might think, it's just too time consuming. We don't have time for that. I'm just going to ask yes, no, or tell them what's happening. Sometimes there's misinterpretations that can be a barrier, especially if our communication partners aren't really aware of the system or the responses that our students are using. You can go on to the next one. There might be some social stigmas that some people have who might be great communication partners. They might have some negative attitudes about AAC, or some old myths. It's gonna suppress their learning of speech, or things that we know are not true. Who's going to maintain the device? Here's another job I have to do. Who's going to do it? These can be barriers, and obviously we can work them out, but we do need to talk about them as a team. There might be some inconsistencies with support. They might not consistently use AAC with the student, and that ability to practice and gain some trust and connection might cause some frustration for our AAC users. There might be an over-reliance on verbal communication. Communication partners may do too much of the verbal communication and not modeling a lot. So we're not giving our students the opportunity to learn their systems. And it also kind of leaves them out of the process. There might be a lack of training and resources, and we know that's all tough. We don't all get full AAC training, even as speech language pathologists. So we all need to have access to more training and some support from people who have had some experience and some training in that. And then finally, there might be resistance to change. There might be a certain way things are done in the classroom, and to bring in an added part might be challenging for a lot of people, and they might not be fully on board. Oops. So just some possible ideas of what we could think about. And I'd love to hear from anybody else. Please throw out any of your ideas. But, you know, sometimes you have that person in your building, paraeducator, might be the custodian, who knows, somebody who's really kind of into technology and might be interested in AAC. And boy, if you can find that person and bring them on board, you know, it's excellent, and it's excellent for the student. There might be siblings in the building who would like to be involved. They're often very caring, and they are a little more familiar with systems, and they might be able to pull in some of their friends. And, you know, if we can help foster them to start like a community or a group that is part of a lunch group or comes into a classroom, that's a great way to get things started. Again, incentives are great, whether it's for our adults or for peers. You know, what can they get out of this? You know, do they get a certificate if they complete some trainings and are working with a student and modeling great things? Or do the students get a free period, and at the end they get to watch a movie with their, you know, communication partners who are AAC users? Or, you know, when they come in, is it just fun? Do we get to talk about the coolest new TikToks or YouTube videos? Is it so fun that they want to be there? Are there resources at school who could suggest students who might benefit from opportunities to help others? And I think a lot of times we want those like star students. And yes, of course, you know, and students who care about getting a good letter of recommendation, all those things are great. But sometimes our students who are having some difficulties on their own are great students to bring in, and we find that they love to help and to feel like they are learning the system and proficient at something too. So, you know, it's just great to talk to people about who might benefit from this, who might feel good about doing this. And then finally, you know, obviously just keeping it as easy for everybody involved. So, you know, if we're having some modeling goals for our staff, we might not say, okay, we're going to work on 8 core words today, and I want you to model them all. Maybe we keep it simple. It's 1 or 2. We, you know, put up the board from the device or the communication system the student's using, and we might circle in red the 2 words we're really working on this week. And we don't have to worry about everything else. We're really just going to be working on go and stop in every way we see that we have an opportunity to do it. And you can move on there. And then here's where it gets tough, you know, meeting with staff. I know time is an issue, but I think we need to let educators and administrators know that when students are using AAC, time is needed for planning. So, you know, to meet with staff, to schedule specific times and activities for when we could model or work on communication even more fully. Of course, communication should be all day. We want to think about routines that are already happening and how can we build communication opportunities into that. Engineering the environment. We want to make it easy for everybody. So if we're all, like I know in Multnomah Early Childhood Program, they use a specific core vocabulary board and it's posted everywhere. If it's everywhere and you don't have to go looking for it, people are more willing to be part of it and to use it and to learn it, and they're more familiar with it if it's everywhere. Using like Quinn, you talked about the communication signal inventories or personal communication dictionaries, even posting those around so everybody knows, oh, you know, the student is arching their eyebrows, and that means I don't think so. You know? Also clearly posting partner strategies that are being practiced, like maybe this week we're going to really work on expectant pause. That's our focus. We want to work on them all at once, of course, but let's really focus on expectant pause and help each other out and coach each other, give each other kudos for, oh, I saw how you were waiting, you were counting your teeth. And then again, it's hard, but really connecting with administrators to say, AAC is very challenging to learn. It's challenging to teach. Can you help in any way with help us find time to do trainings, to support the people who are going to be communication partners, and help us all figure out as a team how we can build in more communication for our students so they can achieve their educational goals.
I wanted to point out in the chat, Quinn said that yesterday the team they met with, they have a security guard that all the students love, and the kids love him to record their voice or to record his voice on their step-by-steps. And Ruth said sometimes our own kids are great communication partners and love to record on step-by-steps. I know my child, who's 13 now, used to record on step-by-steps for me when they were younger, and liked to be a communication partner out at recess. And so, yeah, those are great points. And then I also wanted to say, in terms of like meeting, team meetings, it is important to have that time. But sometimes when you're short on time, even like a text message chain can help. I have worked at a school where we did core word of the week. And so the OT, the teacher, and I were all on this. I think the PT might have been on it too, but we're on the text chain, and we would send a text, Friday for the next week saying, okay, next week our core words are stop and go. And I'm going to do circle time, and these are the activities I'm going to do. And we would just send via text that information because we didn't have time to get us all together in the same building to meet. And, it's not ideal, but you can get some really good planning done that way as well.
I was going to recommend the same. I remember at MACP, we would have a Friday email. I was kind of the lead, and I would say, okay, remember next week, is go. We're reading these books. So-and-so is doing circle. And it just went out every Friday. So everybody was on the same page.
And obviously, if there's a silver lining from the pandemic, we know we can do virtual meetings. People don't have to drive to something. Sometimes that can save time. Katie, can I throw a monkey wrench in your excellent monitoring of our system? Do you think you could do a refresh on the Google Slides? Because I added something, and it's okay if it doesn't work.
Sure. Let's see.
And maybe go back one then.
Uh-huh.
So we were talking about some of these things, like how do we let everybody know what words we're working on, but also like maybe what communication partner strategies we're working on. So this is a form Mary Beth Dorsey and I created a couple years ago, and you don't have to fill it all in, but it's kind of a nice way to have everybody on board. Okay, what are we going to focus on this week? Are there some words? What do we need? Are we going to let's work on prompting this week. Let's talk about how to reduce our prompts or where we want to start, or what kind of communication partner strategy do we want to focus on? Like I was saying before, do we want to focus on responding to all their attempts to communicate? So anyway, this is a form that you can have access to if you find it helpful. It might need some modification because I see it does say sabotage still, and we've talked about how we kind of want to change those words. But something like this that everybody can look at once, whatever works for you, might be a helpful tool. All right, and then on to a really fun way to, with our limited resources and time, bringing peers in for modeling and teaching AAC and using communication partner strategies is super powerful. And rather than spend a lot of time on it, I just wanted to let you know, Sarah Gregory is also an amazing speech pathologist like Lauren Enders. I find her a really great resource for all things, but also she comes up with a lot of great implementation activities. So I encourage you to check her out. But this is a post she has on the Practical AAC blog, which is a great blog also to check out. It's wonderful to look at. You can search specific things if you need to that you're interested in about AAC. But this is about bringing peer modeling into classrooms. And she really goes into the details of maybe how to start that out, get it set up, who might be good candidates. So there's a link on the right there at the top to a printout of her recommendations, but she also has a really nice video from the AAC in the Cloud, which is a free seminar in the summers, if you ever want to check it out, called Leveraging Peer Models. So that's a really great place to look. And then I tried to capture a little bit of what she talked about in the following slides. So she's, it might be hard to talk administrators or staff into having some peer modeling, but, you really want to focus on how all of our students are benefiting from peer modeling, all the benefits the other students get, whether they're older or the same age. Some of them might need a little feel good moment. They might need a little language support, and this is helpful to them. Again, there are the superficial things, like they may want to do a community service that they, get a letter of recommendation or a credit for. But she also talks about, we could also link for those students what Common Core standards they are meeting as our students are working towards some too. So she gave some New York examples here, like one of the Common Core standards is demonstrate that they are motivated to communicate. So, they might be listening attentively, they might be modeling that for the students. So they might be working on some Common Core standards along with their students. And then finally, with a peer model, no one's a gatekeeper to who gets access to AAC. Sometimes we don't know. We do know that some of our English language learners, some of our autistic students, any of our students who benefit from visual supports, some of our students who are struggling with literacy, they may all benefit from having a little exposure to augmentative communication. It may be a support to them. So, nobody's saying, well, they don't get to, work with that or see that. If they're peers, they get that learning and that experience. And I have a lot of parents who their home language is not English, and seeing an English system, they're like, this is really helpful to me to kind of figure out how English is structured. So anyway, just wanted to share that information. And then she talks about, where do we start? And again, she goes into it more, but ideally, if you have an additional device or at least a light tech printout, that's great for the peers to use. We don't necessarily want to use the student's personal AAC device, but it depends. Some students really don't mind. So it might be something we could ask our students. Is it okay if they touch it? If not, that's fine. If we can pull these groups into class structures, they're already going on, instead of creating something separate, that might be more helpful to the whole staff. And then we want to, appreciate multimodal communication and make sure our peers know that we're going to respond to anything, and we're not going to tell them, touch this, or no, you have to say it this way. Ruth, I feel like I saw a chat from you. Sometimes
We were just talking about that slide that you added, Deb, but I think we resolved it. I think we got it. But if anybody has the link to the handouts and could put it in chat, that would also be great.
And then finally, when we're starting, we want to give some explicit directions to our peers about how to be a good communication partner, and help them understand about patience. And they are just starting to learn this. So, we need to wait a little bit. We need to wait. Maybe we need to count our teeth, all these things we've been talking about. Peers are so quick at picking up on this stuff, way quicker than adults, and also on the systems. It's interesting. And then have the staff even join and take a turn with using some of the systems we're using, and including peers. And then sometimes peers have a moment to shine, like, oh, look how much better I am than the teacher. But letting everybody take some turns and have some fun with it. And just thinking about growth mindsets when we're talking about modeling for our peers or for our students how to get to new vocabulary. It's fine if we don't know how to find it, or we we have a misstep, we can say, oh, well, shoe is not going to be in food. Why did I didn't mean to go there. I meant to go to clothes. You know, just talking it through can be a really helpful strategy. Oops. And Katie, I think you were going to show this video.
Oh yes, this is such a cute video. This little girl, I think, is a future SLP, but she is doing some peer modeling. It's really cute.
Stop, look at all these shapes. You see, orange is on the top. Can you press top? Top. Good. Now, do you see purple is on the bottom? Can you press bottom? Bottom. Good. Now let's build them. Let's put purple on the bottom. Can you put it? Now let's put blue on top of the purple. Good, now let's put green on top of blue. Now let's put yellow, say yellow, on top of green. Let's put orange on top of yellow. Done. Yay!
So cute. I love that video. But, you know, she was definitely modeling and she gave him lots of opportunities to, you know, follow the model. Just a great example of peer modeling. Oops.
Stop.
Okay. Oh, and Deborah, this is your kiddo.
Yeah, and I've already done my promotion for how siblings might be a great way to get a group involved at school. But obviously at home, some of our kids aren't having a lot of other peers. So siblings, even who are maybe a little too enthusiastic, if we give them some attention and a little bit of communication, partner strategy intervention, they can be amazing modelers too. And this is just from this morning, so I'm so impressed we got this in here. But very cute picture of these two working together.
And Deborah, didn't you say that the student you showed the partner assisted scanning videos of earlier that was using the wind chimes, her sibling was really good at figuring out a way to communicate with her early on?
Absolutely. She'd already kind of figured out a version of partner assisted scanning to help her sister spell before Ruth and I even were on the scene. So we were so, and she was like 11 maybe. So we were so impressed by that. Yeah, they're quick. These
Yeah.
peers are quick.
All right. It is the people and interaction between them that must be our main focus. I love that quote by Janice Light. So communication, it's not about the technology. It's not about the tool because that's just a tool. It's about the interaction. You know, so take the technology out of it. We are having an interaction with another person, and that's what matters. The technology is just there to help them. And I think when you start thinking of it that way, it becomes a lot less intimidating. So we're going to have an interaction with this person, just like we would a person that is speaking. It's just that they happen to communicate using this tool. So it's really about that interaction. Okay, so that was the end of our slides. It looks like we have about 15-ish minutes that we can take some questions. If you feel comfortable, you can either unmute or you can type it in the chat. But we'd love to hear your questions and hopefully answer some.
I did put the link to the feedback form that will automatically generate your attendance certificate if you want to complete that. And thank you all for coming and sticking with us through this whole series.
Are we counting down the minutes yet till spring break? Is that where we're at with it?
For sure. And I did put the link for the handouts in the chat as well. And I'm
Okay.
just adding that communication strategy plan in there.
Right. I think, oh, let's look. Oh, lots of thank yous. Thank you for coming. I think if I were attending this training, probably one of the most important things, at least that I hope you get out of this, is the partner assisted scanning, because it is so versatile. And I mean, it can be used in a variety of ways and with a variety of individuals, and you don't have to have any like communication tools with you. You can just do it auditorily. So I hope that you all got that part at least. Okay. Other questions or thoughts?
Thanks, Brad.
Okay, well, we'll hang out here, and if you need to hop off, feel free, but we will stick around to answer any questions.
What's the next in the series?
Oh, yes, thanks, Brad. AAC in the IEP, and we're gonna be having some examples of goals and some implementation ideas. So implementation ideas are always the fun part, right? Those fun, motivating activities. So we hope you can join us for that.
Katie, will there be content in that one about AAC and IFSPs, or will the IEP? I see a thumbs up from Deb. Okay,
Oh,
I just didn't know if the content would be like interchangeable across the two.
Yes, we will
Thanks.
make sure we include that.
And that's going to be April 25th at 2:00.
Yeah, we have people, but there's more.
And you can sign up on our website, the Chris calendar.
No, I
I
hope,
can possibly for 12 people.
right. So